We're back, and we're here with Dom Testa. Dom, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You know, one of the things that I was really excited about having you come on the show was the fact that the story of how these books, the Galahad Series, the Comet's Curse, the Web of Titan, the Cassini Code, how all of these books came about, because it's not the usual path for most fantasy and science fiction writers.
No.
I mean, you've been a successful radio host for, well, let's not say how many years. Let's just say
long time.
For a significant period of time.
Marconi was my buddy.
You've had a successful radio program at Drive Time, which is a heck of an accomplishment for years and years and years. What was the impetus for you to write?
Well, I've been writing since I was a little tyke, and really started concentrating on it in high school. And so I was a closet writer for a long time, mostly short fiction. And probably almost 20 years ago, I was invited to a school, one of those celebrity read to students days, right? So they have radio and TV people come in and read to the kids. And I had a great time, and I started spending more and more time working with classrooms on writing. And pretty soon I was doing writing workshops and writing assemblies. And one day, just the light bulb went off. It's like, why don't you write something for them? And so that's pretty much where it was born. It's just to kind of take my efforts and focus it on young adults.
Well, now, it's interesting, too, because you started writing, okay, and so you start writing the Galahad Series. You start writing the Comet's Curse, the first book in the story. The story of, essentially, the potential end of life on Earth, as we know it, as human life on Earth, because of a unique set of circumstances. Why don't you go into what starts this whole story rolling along?
Well, the message for me was going to be somehow about how young people would do on their own, learn to rely on themselves and each other without adults around. And I know the story in a way has been told before. I did not want to write Lord of the Flies Part 2.
Oh, thank you very much.
They haven't started killing each other yet. So I tried to find a unique angle to put these kids somewhere where there were no adults and see how they would behave. I didn't actually set out originally to write a science fiction novel, but that was just my idea. It's just that science fiction lent itself to it very well, and I've been a fan of science fiction since I was a kid. And so the idea was born of a plague, if you will, on Earth that only affects adults, 18 and older generally, deadly, caused by something that's in comet dust, the tail of a comet that the Earth passes through and kind of contaminates the Earth's atmosphere. So what it comes down to is the only way to kind of save the species is to create a lifeboat of sorts and pick out the best and brightest kids that they can find and shoot them off to a new world to start over again. And so that was the basis of the story.
Now, in the first book, The Comet's Curse, we get introduced to a whole host of characters. We meet a lot of adults who are going to soon die because of the disease that is now going through the Earth. And we also meet our principals, I would say they're called, which are the members of the council. These are the appointed leaders of the members of the lifeboat that's going to another planet and another star system. And so we're getting to know them quite a bit, and they're still getting to know each other. And I guess that's part of the structure in the narrative, is a narrative of growth and change that follows along with adventures through each of the books.
Right.
When you were putting this together, did you think this out ahead? Did it grow organically? What was the process of creating the characters and walking them through that first novel?
Well, one of the things even that I teach young people is many times creating biographies of characters, and I created some of these characters before I ever really fleshed out the story, because I knew what I wanted them to represent, and that was what I think was most exciting for me, is creating characters that seemed so real to me that it made it easy to tell the story. I think that's true with any with any literature that you read, I mean, when you become really invested in the characters, you're dying to know what happens to them next. Well, it works for writers that way too, because if you become that invested in your characters, you also can't wait to see what happens. And I would, you use the word organic, and that's probably true. The characters existed before the story itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, we have a whole list of characters here. You have the council leader, Triana,
Mm-hmm.
and she has a tragic story of a mother who was distant, a father who died, one of the first to die of the disease after the comet passed. You have others, and each one of them has a different responsibility. Triana is essentially the leader, appointed leader for the first part of the voyage.
A strong female lead, which, by the way, gets a ton of response from people. They love the fact that there's a strong teenage female character in this book. I get a lot of feedback on that.
You have Bon Hartsfield, who is the head of agriculture. He's responsible for the hydroponics and all the growing because you've got to eat when you're traveling.
Right.
And so he has that. And he has his own story and comes from a different place because these are people from all over the world. Gap Lee, who's a gymnast and is the head of the engineering and is also, because of his gymnastic skills, is also the best airboarder.
Right.
And that's a sport we'll talk about in a few minutes.
I'm proud of
that's
that.
on the show. You've got Channy Oakland, who is the biggest gossip in the ship, plus the head of the health and fitness operation, and you've got Lita Marquez, who's the head medical officer, a 16-year-old medical officer,
Mm-hmm.
which is, it's interesting how you discuss the need for it and the concerns that the people who are putting this expedition together had about it in the first novel, in the Comet's Curse. But the person I really want to talk about is Rock.
Do you like him?
I like Rock.
So
I
do I.
like Rock. I mean, he's smart, he's sarcastic, he cares, and he's a computer.
Yeah, he's not human. Thinks he might be.
Well, it's hard to tell that he's not human
Right.
based upon the interactions you have with him as a reader.
Mm-hmm.
Where did Rock come from?
Oh, it's funny. I have both young people and adults who read the book who ask me constantly if I am Rock.
And
I will not lie. The answer is yes. Rock is my own personal mouthpiece for these stories, because Rock says the things that I would say if I were watching these kids. I think he humbles them, he guides them, but he doesn't let them get too full of themselves, and he has fun. He has a great spirit of fun, and so yes, I definitely come out through Rock. The book series was optioned as a potential made-for-television movie, and one of the things that I brought up early on in the discussions was, I said, listen, if this gets made, I really want to throw my name in the hat to be the voice of Rock, because you never see him; it's just a voice.
Exactly.
And I said, nobody would know him like I do, and so yeah, he's my favorite too. So I'm glad you liked him.
I did. I really enjoyed the story, and I was reading some of the reviews that have been written because, and we'll get back to how long ago the first book was written in a few minutes, because that story is a fascinating story. But I've told you before, one of the reviews I really liked, because Isaac Asimov was one of my favorite authors, is Dom Testa has written a story with a spare Asimovian plot. And I know, and the way it was written, it was meant as a compliment. And I hope you took it as that, because I could see why someone would say that after reading the books.
Yeah, Isaac Asimov was an early hero of mine when I was in junior high / middle school, and so that was a big compliment for me. I kind of cut my teeth on the Foundation series.
Oh yeah.
When I was a little kid, and so yeah, I took that as a great compliment.
Now, we've had authors on before who've talked about the struggle to get that first book published. You took it a step further. You decided, the heck with the struggle. Let's just get this thing
Take
published.
the bull by the horns, kind of thing.
Let's tell the story of how this all started and how you ended up establishing your own publishing house.
Well, it's funny because when I started writing the book, my goal was never to go get a publishing deal with somebody. I knew that the process was very long and arduous. First, find an agent, which can take forever, and then the agent starts pitching it to publishers, which can technically take a long time. And I was anxious to get the books in the hands of the kids. So the books were going to be my calling card for the work that I did with students. So when I was writing the book, I never once thought about sending out query letters to agents or publishers. I made the decision from the get-go, I'm going to publish these myself right away. That way I'll have them, I'll get them out. And so I started my own publishing company, published the first book, found an editor who's terrific, found a cover artist who's fantastic, he lives in England, just happened to find him online. Put all the pieces together, published the first one, published the second one. And as I was getting ready to put the third book out, I was talking to another good friend of mine. She's written 20-something books, Judith Briles. She's just incredible. And I was having a beverage with her on my back deck one day, and I said, you know, I love the writing, and I love the speaking that goes along with it, but running a publishing company, when you're trying to be a full, an author, along with a full-time radio job.
Yeah, and a radio job is not one of those things where you can take a month off to think.
No, right. Especially doing a morning show.
Exactly.
So I said, what I need to sell this series. And she said, well, I tell you what, she goes, I've got a friend who's an agent back on the East Coast. Why don't we send your work to him? And that's Jacques de Spoelberg. Jacques' been around in the business for a long time. So I sent the package to him. Do you want to hear this quick story?
Oh, yeah.
I sent the package to Jacques, and he essentially wrote back and said, you know, I normally don't represent young adult, but I have a friend of mine, his name is Tom Doherty, and of course, I'm a science fiction fan. I know who Tom Doherty is. I've been a fan of Tor, the publishing company, for a long time, and he said, send it to Tom with a note. And I thought, really, how presumptuous is that, to bypass the editors and the acquisition editors and send something directly to Tom? I sent him a package with the first 2 books that I had published.
Right.
And 5 days later, Kathleen Doherty, Tom's daughter who oversees young adult, called me and said, we have your books, we love them, Tom loves your books, we want to sign you to a 6-book deal. So,
Okay, at that moment, you're sitting there on the phone. How long was the silence as it sunk in?
I'll tell you something, Tom. I was actually at the radio station. I had just come off the air. So it's about 10 o'clock in the morning, and my cell phone rings, and it's an unidentified call. I almost didn't answer. But I did, and Kathleen, those were the first words out of her mouth. Hi, this is Kathleen Doherty with Tor. We'd like to offer you a 6-book deal. And I said, I have to call you right back. Hold on a second. So I got her number and called her back, and then flew to New York and met with her, and have had a blast. Tor has just been a dream to work with. They're the best.
They've got the reputation of being one of
They're
the
the
best.
best.
They support their writers. They support their writers.
But I'll tell you something that is important to me, and this is what I tell some other authors writers who want to get published, is you need to create a gravity for what you're trying to do. If you just want to stand on a mountaintop and yell, hey, I've got a great book, everyone should buy my book, there's a lot of people doing that. But the approach I took was do something that creates gravity that brings people to you. And not only was it publishing the books myself, but it was promoting the books and working the books and putting the time and the effort into it.
Right.
That, as I say, creates gravity and helps your process a lot more.
And we should say something about the way that this book is structured, because you've got this great story. You tell this great story, and it's part of a longer story, of course, 6-book deal. Got to have 6 books in the story. They've got to get somewhere, and you've got to tell them the story. But in the back of the book, it was like, I was opening it up, and it was like an educational manual. And I mean that in a positive and complimentary sense. So you read the book. So what'd you think? Well, if you had been in that position, what would you have done? I mean, it was fascinating the way that you just try to keep them use this book to get their imagination running and let them tell a story and let them create more of a story and to think more deeply about the story they've just read, rather than just reading it and then going on to the next thing.
Well, the more you can get young people invested in the story and the characters, the better. And what I found through working with schools all over the country is some of the curriculum that they put together, curriculi, the study lessons that they put together are so involved with various projects. It's blown me away with what some schools are doing with these books. They'll get all 300 kids, say, in a middle school to read the book, and then they do an afternoon with stations set up where kids go one place and they learn to grow food indoors. They go to another and they have an indoor planetarium set up that the kids can kind of study the stars. They go to another station and they role play a scene that they create, they make up based on the book. And teachers have become so creative with the way that they get kids drawn into the story that I'm blown away. And I take all of the lesson plans that they come up with and we make them downloadable on my website so other teachers can kind of climb on board too.
And you've also started an educational thing with trying to make, you've talked about before, I think in some of your presentations, about making kids not feel strange because they're smart, or because they like to study, or because they like science,
Right.
or because they're interested in something like that, that they shouldn't feel ostracized because some people are uncomfortable with their own intellectual capabilities.
Well, there's been a stigma for a long time that's been attached to, quote, smart kids. There's a lot of name calling, nerd, dork, geek. And so kids, naturally, I mean, the most important thing in a young person's world is to be accepted by their peers. Bar none, that's the most important thing to kids. And if they start saying, oh, well, if I do well in school, someone's going to call me a geek or a nerd, so I'm going to intentionally dumb down. And there are millions of kids who do that. They're super sharp, but they think, oh, well, if somebody thinks that I'm a geek by doing this, I don't want that. I want to be with the cool kids. So my message to young people is, you don't have to choose between being smart and using your brain. You can do, and being cool. You don't have to choose between showing some intellectual achievement and being cool. You can do both. And we try to find as many role models as we can for my foundation to show kids that, yeah, you need to look beyond just this tiny little section of your life, your school years. You've got another 60, 70 years after that you don't want to look back and regret, oh, I blew off my education because I wanted to be cool for 3 years. And now I'm out of school and suddenly I realize nobody really cares how cool I was in school. Now this is all they care about. Right. So my foundation is called the Big Brain Club. And the Big Brain Club is not about straight A students. It's not about honor rolls. It's about kids becoming the best version of themselves they can be. And that means don't blow off your education. That's what you're going to need later in life. When you're past the everything needs to be cool stage, you're gonna be happy that you paid attention to what was going on with your classes. So we help kids overcome the peer pressure to dumb down and help them realize you really want to succeed in life. You need to kind of envision your future a little bit.
And with that, we're going to have to end the interview. We're out of time. Dom, thank you very much. The Galahad series currently consists of The Comet's Curse, The Web of Titan, and the Cassini Code is coming up later this year. Delightful books, a wonderful read, engaging characters, and congratulations on all the other things you've used this to build on. I really think it's marvelous.
I appreciate that. It's been a blast, and thanks for letting me be a guest on your show.
Thank you. Well, that's it for this edition of Fast Forward. We hope you found something of interest. You'll hope to come see us again. Until then, take care.